My name is Gary Larizza. I am a professional services engineer for Puppet Labs. If you've heard my name before, you probably know me from this type of thing. Yes, I write some stuff occasionally. Or as Nigel would say, he came up to me yesterday and was like, people keep asking, is the Shit Gary Says guy here? Where's Shit Gary Says? My name is like synonymous with shit at this point. More so than Donald Trump, but like, hey, whatever works. Yeah, so October 24th, 2014, I'm sorry. I have like 8 articles in the queue, but it turns out when I publish things, you guys actually do them and cite them as like a source. That's a lot of pressure. No pressure. I am moderately Reddit famous, which is kind of cool. If you go to bit.ly/GaryIsAdick, it goes right here. And what's funny is that one of my managers like cited that out to me. And the thread is full of mostly Puppet Labs employees, and then like one guy who was genuinely like, no, he's a dick. Thanks. Like, OK, at least, yeah, you got it. And that dick is on this keynote stage, which is kind of cool. I was positing the first day, because I was walking around, I was like, OK, where am I going to speak? Where's my room? Crap. Like, now my demo has to work. And I'm on the main stage, and can I say shit? Like, can I actually say shit? And I posited about that, and Sad Server himself was like, I'll be saying shit, so like, don't sweat it, which is great, because he's elevating. We're all about elevating today. All the expletives I already know will still work day one today. But the last thing is, this is one thing I always get questions about. If you saw my like talk from last year, scroll to the very end. There's a story about Uber. That is not the actual amount. Remember, that's half the amount. The full amount is down there. I still take Uber and Lyft a lot, and I will still ask the drivers what their like biggest fare was. And people will be like, whoa, I got like a $100 fare. It was insane. I was like, yeah, that must have sucked. But I have had 3 requests to send this to people, and somebody took a screenshot so they could send it to their mothers and be like, look, I got a big fare to California. So if you are playing the home game, and if there's anybody at home like streaming and watching this, sorry, but there you go, bit.ly/2015 PC Talk will take you to an outline with everything I'm going to talk about, OK? So don't need to take pictures. We will get there. And what I'm going to talk about is actually a bit of refactoring, because last year was the talk about, I'm getting in there, helping you get everything set up, R10K, roles, profiles. But more and more, we're seeing customers who have already done all of this. And then now it's like, great, I need to make it better. I need to change the code around. And specifically, the cases are, I want the code to do the same thing. I just want to clean it up. Maybe grab data from somewhere else. I'm not adding or removing functionality. Just make it better. And a lot of times, code refactoring is a bit like that, which I have now my requisite like cat gif, so I guess the talk is legit. But the bigger deal is, when you refactor, you want to short or test or anything. You want a short feedback loop. Make a change, does it work? Make a change, does it work? Make a change, hopefully it works. And I found that on the internet as an example of code refactoring, because that's kind of what it is. You find one thing, and then 12 things explode, hence yak. So for this talk, basically, what I'm going to do is try and introduce some things that will hopefully build your confidence that the changes you've made before actually even rolling them out are in line. You haven't forgotten anything, right? And so we're going to talk about 2 specific methods, 2 workflows. One of them is a catalog diffing workflow, because fundamentally, everything you do with Puppet, like everything, is all to build this object called the catalog. It's a JSON document. Love us some JSON, let me tell you, especially like on Arch Linux in C++. But if you generate a catalog that is exactly the same as another catalog, you know Puppet's going to do the same thing. So we're going to talk about the workflow of just comparing catalogs. That won't necessarily cover all the cases. What if you change your code materially and you go from like a file resource to a bunch of INI file resources? Catalog's not going to be the same. In that case, we're going to talk about acceptance level tests, Beaker poking about at the system. Fair warning, there are other Beaker talks that have happened or will happen, and they're probably a bit better. Mine is introducing you to it. I want you to have something you can copy and paste and start working with. I'm not saying I'm the definitive source for all the tests. Just get it up and running. That's what we're going to talk about. So the first side is going to be the catalog diff workflow. And you usually have a couple of needs. The first one is, hey, I refactored some code. I want to, on maybe a couple canary nodes, on a couple nodes that are the exceptions, I want to compile a catalog, the old code, compile it with the new code, and then just check and see what's different or what is not. Cool, like we can do that. Going above that is, once you've done that, maybe doing that same procedure on a bunch of nodes, or all your nodes in your fleet. There's another module for that. I'll point you at it. I'm not going to demo it. And then we're going to talk about the upgrade case. Is anybody right now who's using Puppet on the 4.0 stuff, or the new Puppet syntax, or the awesome? There's a couple of people. Everyone else? Yeah. When you upgrade from 3 to 4, there's probably going to be some cases. Wouldn't you like to know before you actually flip over the server that it's going to work or not? I know that ruins the fun, but hey. So let's just kind of look at that. We're going to look at the Puppet preview tool. So if I go, I just have a Vagrant VM up and running. And if you look on my Google Doc here that I'm going to make bigger, and people are signing in, how cool is that? I have the Puppet preview module here that will link you to just straight up the docs. And straight up the docs are really good. The module itself is downloadable from the Forge. You do need a Puppet Enterprise license. For people that have Puppet Enterprise and have looked at the license file, don't ruin the secret for everyone else. But the catalog preview can be downloaded, and you get this magical preview face. Is that going to need to be bigger? Probably. Look at that. So Puppet help preview gives you all the preview docs. Don't care, though. What I do care about, though, is actually running this tool. So if I can find my mouse, I don't have El Capitan. I cannot just quickly find the cursor. What I have on this node is a couple of environments. I've run R10K. I'm using my main control repo, so if you know that from the GitHub, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I have a production environment, and then I've created an environment called Puppet Preview. It's exactly the same. One minor difference, we'll cover it later. But what I'm doing is saying, look, Puppet Preview for this node, specifically preview.puppetlabs.vm, the new environment is called this. The original environment is this. Just give me an overview view. And I should have hit the button to do that a while back because, again, not C. But what it's going to do is compare both sides, generate catalog, diff between them, and then just give me the overview view. In this case, right now, should be identical. Should be. And when it eventually comes back, it will say, hey, it is equal 100%. Cool. Now let's do some changes. So if I go into production, just go down to site pp, I'm going to declare a file like a var temp foo. By the way, Ryan Coleman, this is VI. You can go up and down in it. You save when you're done. And then hopefully it works. Watch, this will not work, and he is going to laugh regardless. So all I did was add a file resource to the original environment, production. Okay? And then I'm running this tool again, which should do the comparison and then list that, hey, there's one resource that used to be there, and ain't there no mo. And pause for the cause. There it is. It says, hey, var temp foo is missing. It's conflicting. It comes from site.pp, line 48. There you are. There's the missing edge. So if I go into the Puppet preview site.pp, let's go here and uncomment this. Again, Ryan, multi-line uncommenting. File resource, but I'm going to add a different mode, 0604. And just to show what it looks like if you have the same thing in both environments, fundamentally a resource with the same title, but you're going to have an attribute, a property that is different between them, in this case, the mode. Spoiler alert, gives you the same thing, it just points out that the attribute, the mode, is different eventually when it comes back up. There we go. Cool. So yeah, attribute issue, mode, added compliant. There's where it came from. Okay. So I'm just doing one resource, but you can have many, many, many resources that are out there. The next use case here is going to be for upgrades. So if I go back here and I'm going to comment that out, in both sides, in my production and in Puppet Preview, I'm going to declare the same class again. Exclude here. John McCoy, did you see what I did there on commenting? I'm laughing because a lot of times when I go on site with customers, a lot of what I'm doing is teaching Git and VI. I'm not kidding. A lot of what I'm saying is Control V, J, 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 Shift, Escape. Now it's like, cool, use Emacs. So same thing in both places, but I'm going to make one additional change. Environment.conf, I'm going to turn the future parser. The future is now, my friends, like literally, right when I just hit that button. And let's go ahead and see, I can find my cursor, what Puppet Preview with the future parser is going to do. Fundamentally, I added one more flag, migrate 3.8 to 4.0, and then I have an overview view of what that's going on. What I'm actually applying, which would have been helpful, and I didn't show it, but I can show it after the fact, because that makes sense, is production, modules. I have my profiles module, and I have a profile here called Puppet 4 changes. So there's some changes that were breaking or backwards incompatible. One of them is an empty string is now a true value in Puppet 4 because it has been with Ruby. If you've ever used if empty string, guess what? Stuff's going to change. So in 4.0, you'll see the notify. In 4.0, we also gave you the ability now to use a / as a closing character in a single quoted string. Previously, it thought you were escaping the quote, and then bad things happen. So now in 4.0, this will literally be 1 /. Previously, it will be 2 slashes. And then in 4.0, if you don't quote your mode, it's a numeric, and the file resource just hates you, and it won't work. So if you have a lot of unquoted modes out there, guess what? Get that single quoted finger button working. You're going to be doing that. And then when you run this, here's what it looks like. Yes, OK, I'll acknowledge first. So we introduced some code in Puppet Enterprise that when you run with catalog preview lists as being conflicting and not upgradable. Yeah, that's about to be fixed, but it's showing up. The real deal that we want to see here is, look, you have a notify that gives you 2 slashes in the production environment. But down here in Puppet Preview, it actually comes out to be a single slash. Or empty string as a true value is over here in Puppet Preview in the newer parser, right? So what this gives you the ability to do is basically take the code you already have, create a new Puppet environment, turn on the future, which is 4, and then compile your catalog and see what's going to happen. Hopefully, it'll fix it before you stand up a whole 4 server, but it gives you some confidence. And the tool is really cool for that. I didn't demo, but if you look on the site here, we have included some queries that will use jQuery, to search specifically for certain types of resources. Like if you have a bunch of conflicting resources, you only want to see what the files are doing, you can use jQuery for that, and it will strip out and just show you the files. Yes, it's going to show you a diff in JSON, structured data. But yeah, jQuery actually colorizes too, which is awesome. Like, that's a user experience, right? So that is the preview tool. Now, if you would like to do this on more than one nodes, you should hire us. Or go and look and talk to Zach Smith. His fork of the catalog diff tool allows you to actually run it on multiple Puppet masters and batch. Take all of your nodes, the old catalog, compile a new catalog, and diff them and give a huge report. So this is going to be a little bit more like you'll have to get a little more in depth playing with it. But when you get it set up once, the feedback loop is super small. It's really helpful for doing all the code stuff that you want to do. So jumping back into Keynote, hitting play, commenting on my life. The next step, right? So that only gives you diffs. And diffs in the catalog, again, if you're materially changing it, it's not going to get you too far. You need to actually be able to take the code, spin up a system, declare it with some Puppet code, and then poke at it with something that isn't your config management system, right? That's why we have server spec out there. And for that, we have cool tools that will allow you to do that. We have one. It's called Beaker. Yeah, like the whole Muppet motif. There isn't a command line tool. Unfortunately, it's not cutesy, like running tests isn't typing meep or something like that. I'm very sad and actually kind of happy it isn't just meep. But what Beaker allows you to do is spin up some nodes, fresh, based on some sort of virtualization platform, apply Puppet code to it, and then poke at it with some tests. That's like fundamentally it. The bigger deal here, though, is Beaker is a tool that we created originally for our internal test harness. So the vanilla Beaker is its own DSL. It's its own language, kind of like Puppet is to Ruby. And so we use it internally to test all of our internal Puppet stuff. So there's a lot of extra methods there. The community that's built modules is pretty familiar with RSpec. RSpec we've used with RSpec Puppet. In the Ruby community, it's just the way. So Beaker has a gem, Beaker RSpec, that allows you to use Beaker tests while using the RSpec language you all know and love. And if you don't know it, it will be something you might know and kind of hate. But that's what's adaptable. There's a big difference between Beaker and Beaker RSpec. On the wiki, they have laid it out better than I just did. For the provisioning front end of Beaker, you have lots of virtualization platforms. A lot of people will just set it up on Vagrant because they have it and it's easy. Docker, very, very fast. If you have vSphere or VMware Fusion, you can use that. You can read. I don't have to do it for you. And as a matter of fact, instead of just reading, how about we actually just do it? And I can show you what everything looks like. So let's go to my repo. Cool. So again, if you're playing along at the home game on the talk outline, there's some links. The module I used in the demo is Puppet-profiles. That's what we're talking about. Trying to reconnect. Awesome. No internet. So Puppet-profiles is the module. And here's what we're doing. Like with Beaker, we are testing this module. And this is my profiles module. So it's all going to be based relative to there. To get Beaker up and running, it's the spec directory, and then it's pretty much the acceptance directory. Inside the acceptance directory itself is where you put your tests. But the node sets directory is where you set up the provisioning aspect, right? You can set up many different types of systems, CentOS, Fedora, Ubuntu, right? All that kind of thing. If you don't specify the systems you want, you get default.yml. And inside here is there's the magic bits, right? So we set up the host. We give it its role, which is different depending on what type of Puppet setup you use. It's an EL6, x86, 64. There's the box name. There's where you can get it if you don't have it, because I'm using Vagrant. And then the config type. In this case, I'm just going to use open source, because all I want is Puppet to be on the system, and I just want to run Puppet apply. Like, I just want to apply some code, so I don't necessarily need the whole PE stack for this. You can set the type to PE and set the version to be something else, but that's a bit overkill for what I'm doing today. And a lot of times you'll see us using the FOSS side. So the node sets are just the provisioning aspect of it. The next side is setting things up, okay? Because once you've got a system provisioned, you need to, I don't know, get Puppet on the machine. You need to pull down the modules. This is a profiles module, right? So it is a wrapper class. And it uses other modules, the Jenkins module, the Java module, the whatever. So fundamentally, I need to get all that stuff set up. Yeah, there's a lot of code. Don't be afraid. I've commented out the parts that I've used that are plugins. In this case, I'm using the Beaker Puppet Install Helper plugin just to automate the process of getting Puppet installed. Like, you drop that in, it works. The gem is in the gem file in this repo. Again, check it out. In the RSpec configure block, basically first I'm getting the path to my module root. And again, because this is in the spec directory, I go up a directory and then, hey, there's my module. And the module name, because it's Puppet dash profiles, I'm getting the last after the dash. And then really, here are the lines that set up every host. And we're iterating through every host, but if we only call one, you only have one. And what we're doing is, first, I'm going to run Puppet apply to get Git installed. Because the plugin that I'm using to pull down modules is using Git repositories as modules. So I need to have Git on my base box, and a lot of base boxes don't. So this is kind of a step that I jump in. Because I'm only using Red Hat systems, I can do it this way. If I were using other systems, I would have to use some other language or just bake Git on there. And then we have one line that says Beaker spec helper spec prep host. It's the camp-to-camp Beaker spec helper module, which I just discovered when I was using this. Raphael, again, Pinson, awesome dude, cool stuff. At least I hope it's him, but it's probably the whole community. And what it allows you to do is reuse a file called fixtures.yml. So if you've used RSpec Puppet before, you may be familiar with fixtures. This is basically the where are the modules you need, what are they, where are you getting them from, and what version. This feels a lot like a Puppet file, right? Because it's a lot like a Puppet file. Let's count our consistency. So we have a Puppet file that the control repo uses for managing modules. We have fixtures.yml that RSpec Puppet uses. In Beaker, we have a file called spec helper acceptance. Spec helper acceptance is like the setup harness after you get provisioned. And so people were inside this file doing like Puppet module install or git clone. Now you have a third way to like document modules. And nobody likes to repeat their usage. So I like Beaker spec helper because it reuses something we ought to already have. We have a guy internally who has built a project to try and kind of like uniform all these things, unify them. But that's what it's doing. Iterate through, clone all those modules out, okay? So what's a test look like if that is just the setup? The tests are inside spec acceptance, and they are named whatever underscore spec, okay? So Jenkins underscore spec, that's so the rake file will go out there and we'll find them and we'll clone and iterate and everything. Inside Jenkins underscore spec, there's your test. Now, again, a lot of scaffolding here. I'm setting up a hash just to list the names of like the port, the service, all that type of thing we're doing. You'll see this in a lot of tests, and people will be like, why? In Puppet, I already have the name of the service. I already have that logic. Why do I have to repeat it here? Well, in this case, the tests that we are building are not being run through Puppet. We're using a library called serverspec that is agnostic. It's independent from any configuration management system. It knows how to poke at the system, but you have to give it data. And you kind of don't want to give it the data from the CM side after the fact, because it feels like you're faking it before and after. But that's why it shows up there. The test itself is down here. We're saying, all right, look, if you declare the profiles Jenkins class first, you ought to not get a compilation error. And then second, if you run it a second time, the exit code should probably be 0 because it should be idempotent. It shouldn't make changes again. Those are, two tests. Apply them, expect them. And again, this is the Beaker RSpec language. The remaining 3 tests are pretty easy. For the service of, in this case it comes out to being Jenkins, it's expected to be enabled and running. That's pretty legible. Again, server spec language, RSpec. The port should be listening. And I even wanted to get a command, because run a command. And when I was doing this, I was reminded that Java, the version command is -version, not --version. And also reminded that Java version sends nothing to standard out. Wait, no, I take that back. Yes, nothing. It sends the information to standard error. It prints 2 lines with OpenJDK info, like exit 0 gives you the finger. And was like, great. So I could check the exit status. It should be 0. And then standard error, which should have been standard out, but not, should match a regex of 1.7.0_85 or the string. Again, this is really baked towards like today, because if they update Java, then guess what? That's not going to work. But I wanted something for you guys to copy and paste out. And that's pretty legible. This is pretty much what we're doing. The hardest part is iterating through things and then poking at it. And then also, yeah, getting it up and run to test. So there's your tests. Now, running Beaker, I've already run it ahead of times because, man, I've seen how demo's gone today. But what you do is we have a rake file that I have in my module. I pulled it from Gareth's module skeleton. If you know and learn nothing today, learn that there is a module called Puppet Module Skeleton that Gareth has that has like some base settings for all modules. And he defines his own skeleton, his own rake file for tasks. You see there is a rake Beaker task that will run all Beaker acceptance tests. And that's really what I want to do. So time b rake Beaker. Now, this is like I'm faking it. This is not actually the real thing because Beaker takes environment variables. Beaker destroy, Beaker provision. If you set Beaker destroy to be no, when you run Beaker, it will set up the nodes, run the tests, and then leave it there. If you don't set Beaker destroy, it tears away the environment. Because I'm using Vagrant, basically leaves Vagrant there, or it forces it to shut down. You can also set Beaker provision to be yes or no. If you set Beaker to be Beaker provision yes, it spins up the node. If you don't and say Beaker provision no, it assumes it's already running. So the workflow is the first time, run it with Beaker provision and set Beaker destroy to be no. Run it so it does something. It'll be left there. Now you can set Beaker provision to be no, and then just go mess with your tests. Change the test, run Beaker. Change the test, run Beaker. Change the test, run Beaker. Okay? I am doing an awful lot of stuff in the background, which is why it takes forever. But it shortens down the loop. It lets you learn the syntax. It lets you get some tests up and running. Okay? And there we go. Now we're actually into the tests, and it's going to iterate through them. You can also set Beaker debug, and you will see everything that's going on. But there it is. It should compile successfully and be idempotent. It should be enabled, should be running, should be listening. That should equal 0. And because I set Beaker, and there we go, Beaker destroy to be no and Beaker provision to be no, I can actually change into the Vagrant directories, SSH into the box, and then do like service Jenkins status to see what's up. Jenkins is not readable. You forgot sudo. Yeah, cool. So service Jenkins status there, and it's running. So if you're not sure, if you're like, what did this test do? You can go into the system, but also if you actually want to see what the test did, you can set Beaker debug to be on, and time rake Beaker. Yeah, the other thing I also do is teach people like what Control R does and type things out. It's cool. And again, I'll run the test, and you will see like fundamentally all the things, right? There it's cloning it out. All the modules already exist. That was coming from the spec prep helper to do all of that. So if something fails there, you know it already exists. You can see it. What takes forever? Oh, it's hitting the forge because the interwebs. Okay? And that's Beaker. Now, I have worked with a lot of customers, and universally what I get is Beaker is a pain to set up. It's a pain to set up because there's not a lot of docs out there. There's not a lot of good standards. Like, there's no copy and paste. Give me the thing to copy and paste. And that's kind of what I wanted to try and give you today. The other thing that I recommend to people is look at all of our supported modules. If we list on the Forge it's supported, we kind of need to test it because SLAs and like money. Those modules will have good Beaker tests for them. One of the 8 articles in the queue that I have half written is like how to Beaker, which is like basically this talk. Hopefully I will push that out now that I have this. Again, still running. Puppet apply in the background. And there we go. There are the tests. You can see specifically what it did for every test. Down here, do check config. Should be enabled. Yes, that completed. Check the status. Netstat to check the port. Run Java version. There's what Java version actually did. So Beaker debug is helpful there. When you get to the point that you start creating these, or if you say, you know what, it takes too long to create Beaker tests, fine. When you have a problem with your Puppet code and you find a bug, write a test. Like, do one. Create one, scaffold one, and then start building upon it. Over time, you'll finally at least have the things that blew up in your environment that you can go back to. Okay? The other thing to look at is, down here in the talk, Puppet community plugins. Like, really, really, really cool stuff. If I can copy and paste. Honestly, this is where I found some of them. Like, we've got them collected together. Beaker Spec Helper. There you go. There was one plugin that I was also going to point back to, but I cannot remember. Setting up Hyro and Beaker is notoriously kind of a pain. The goal here is for the community, for more people to use this, so we can actually drive and get more features and more use out of Beaker itself. I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. I do have about 12 minutes. I wanted to leave 10. That's all I had for the talk. If you had questions on anything you've seen on testing on Beaker and want to answer them, we have mic runners that are out here somewhere. Also, if you have questions on other stuff, past things, talk, anything you want to raise right now, I'm giving you all 10 minutes. Anybody have a question? Yay. Where were the mic runners? That's all right. I'm loud. You can be too. You, sir. Yeah. So the question was, we're a shop that's no Ruby programmers. This is all like really cool, but we're getting into the depth of Ruby. I get it. Like, I totally understand it. And that's kind of why I wanted to provide the scaffolding, because the tests are reasonably legible. It should be installed. It should be running. And in fact, when I need to relearn all of this, I go and look to serverspec.org, and I actually just copy and paste out of what I find here. Right? There's some tests that list all of them. Many different types, not just the ones that I listed, like all these things. So to your question, I get it. Like, it's fine. There are other methods for like testing Puppet that don't need to be in Beaker, but you might want to poke at it on your spare time and free time. You might find something that would be just helpful, even on the harder modules. It doesn't have to be for everyone. Question in the back over there in the corner. Wait, we have mics. There they are. Yes, developers, developers, developers.
I wanted to know if it's possible to do multi-node testing with Beaker, so exported, imported resources across nodes.
Don't ask me that. Yeah, how do we Beaker test exported resources? It's a problem. I was talking with Brett Gray about that. I don't think that there is a good way or an easy way to do it as of right now. I could be stand corrected. I am not an authority on Beaker. If someone's an authority on Beaker and wants to yell or catch me, let me know, please. But yeah, that's one of the downfalls right now. And we understand that because internally in PE, we use modules that ship stuff around. And yeah. Question? Where? Up here.
Yeah, so we're using a lot of what you've showed today, but we've been trying to get that to work on vSphere. Is there any documentation about that? We want to build it into our CI pipeline.
No, that's totally cool. I know there are folk that are using it on vSphere itself, and I have referred people who have taken it from there. I believe it uses the fog library for those credentials, so you need to make sure you have that file set up. I'm going to jump over to the old wiki, and yeah, like, I get it. This is kind of the docs right now. Yes, I get it. That's why we're trying to do better there. I presume you have already been here and you've already seen this and tried to get this up and running and it didn't? You're correct, and it did not work? Do you remember specifically like what the issue was? No, okay. Yeah, see us afterwards. There are people on the Beaker team who have done talks. I think Kevin Imber did one before. Like, track us down. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on, or at least get you engaged. Other questions?
Oh, here you go.
In the fixtures.yaml, is there a way to supply SSH keys to pull your repros down?
So in fixtures.yaml, can you provide SSH keys right there? No, it's not there in the file. You would have to do that in the spec helper acceptance. So in spec helper acceptance, on the system under test, on the host, here you would have to set that up. Right? You would have to get the keys on there and registered. Fortunately, we have resources for managing that. Use Puppet resources to set the key up and then run it. It's going to be run under the root user. But yeah, that's a squishy edge case. Not really. Everybody has like private repos and keys. It's kind of a big deal. Questions? Any more? We have one way up here in the front.
Oh.
Here, yell into my mic. I do. I don't know.
Not you?
So I just have a comment to the last question. Our team's solution to the SSH key problem is, excuse me, we actually check out all of the modules locally using your credentials, and then we symlink them into our tests. And that way you don't have to have every box checking it out, and you can manage your keys on your local machine.
Yep, that is another great point for that. There is a SCP method to copy from your machine to the host, and that's what you can do. Instead of using the spec prep there, you can just say, like, iterate through all of them, copy them over. Yep. See, that's kind of why the spec helper acceptance is totally the Wild West right now, because it's all like ad hoc, do what you need in your organization. I'm hoping we get some of this stuff up, extracted out into gems and helper plugins so that we don't have to make this a wasteland. Questions?
I just wanted to say thanks for all your shit.
I give it out. I mean, hey, I can take it too. You're totally welcome. Like I said, it's very weird to have people, I will walk in on gigs, and there was one recently where it started off kind of like hostile and confrontational, and the tech person was like, do you know who this is? This is Gary. He's the one that writes. Oh, and then like the mood changes. Oh, because I wrote some stupid jump and made like Harry Potter jokes. So it's weird. I'm humbled. Like originally, you guys were not meant to see this. This was just me so that I didn't have to repeat myself. But I'm glad it's been useful. So you're totally welcome. You're the reason that I keep writing it, or else I just would have like ran away many times before. Another question?
Yep. Hey, is there a way to test against the masters instead of pulling everything down? Because we have like secrets and all that kind of stuff that we don't want to put private keys on the test infrastructure.
So on a Puppet master itself to run Beaker rather than?
More to get a catalog that's generated from a master rather than pull all the modules down, run Puppet apply, have to decrypt the YAML secrets. We also have like other non-file-based higher backends.
Basically, you're saying if you pre-generate a catalog, basically just apply that to the node during the Beaker test?
That would probably do.
That would probably do. Like you could obviously do that because again, spec helper acceptance is a wasteland. You could copy it into the module, like run it there. There'd be some scaffolding. You would have to do that ahead of time, but I don't think it's built into Beaker right now to account for that. But again, see me, feature request.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. We have one up here too, if we have a runner, like truly running.
I just came from there. You didn't have that question like 3 minutes ago?
Thank you for not. That was funny. You didn't have that question 3 minutes ago? Yeah, you did.
All right. It was the previous file where you did the FOSS open source, but you can also connect to the Puppet Enterprise.
Yep.
I don't know if you call it provider or what have you.
Yep.
Is there a way that Beaker will clean up your certs, or a way to clean up the certs after it's all done, so I could run this test over and over again?
So on this file right here?
No.
Or no, oh yeah, sorry, it's in node sets.
Yeah.
So spec acceptance node sets default.yaml, right? So
Yep.
is there a way to?
On the config. So I'm guessing if I run these tests against the Puppet server, it's going to cert all over the place, and I won't be able to. It won't?
No, what it's going to do in this case, if you set roles master database, it's going to set up a new master. Like it installs PE, and then it uses that PE to run the tests.
Oh, that's really cool. So then I have a follow-up question then. Because when it sets up PE, it has to put all the modules everywhere. Does that module line take care of all that?
Yeah, so if it uses PE, like it's going to be there in the module path to find the Puppet Enterprise modules. They're in opt Puppet share Puppet modules in the old version. They will still be there. They'll still be able to be discovered. You just need to account for your modules. Don't worry about ours in that case.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. 3 minutes. I'll do one more question-ish, and then maybe one story or joke, and that'll be it.
Kind of a follow-up to that, is there a way to use different roles with the open source config?
Different roles so that install open source Puppet like in a different configuration?
Well, like, I guess kind of like the other person was asking about how to test exported resources. Could you set up a database role or Puppet DB role?
Well, so the install here is basically just to get Puppet on the machine. We're not actually testing the components of Puppet itself because we test those internally. So this is basically just stubbing to get access to Puppet so we can run Puppet apply. Anything beyond that is kind of probably not the right place for it. I haven't heard of anybody doing anything like that. One, I guess, let's see, do I have a final question or a final thing is that there was a talk this week that Denny did on LGBT identity and tech, and it was good. It was the first one that we had here. We had LGBT meetups, all that sort of thing. And it's in response to this blog post that he posted back in March, and then him and Luke had a conversation. And Denny was like, all right, I hope I'm not the only voice in the Puppet community. It would be great to get a dialogue going. To which Luke said, you're definitely not. There are others involved, and listed myself and Kara. Funny thing was, like at that point, I had been out for a while, but never at a business standpoint. Like I kind of hadn't crossed it. And I was like, wait a minute, did Luke just out me to everybody in a tweet? Really? It was funny. I'm really appreciative that that type of thing is coming along. I really can't say enough about the effort, and I'm very thankful for Denny and his talk. Thank you, everybody, for showing up to my sessions. As long as you comment and appreciate it, I will be doing all the crazy shit I do. Hopefully, I will see you or not see you on gigs. Thank you.